Many industries have been badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. A relief fund is now being launched for journalists who've lost their livelihoods as a direct result of the lockdown. It comes after several print publications, especially magazines, had to close down. For more on the fund, we're joined by the chair of the South African National Editors Forum, Mahlatse Mahlase. Mahlatse, good evening to you. How important is this fund? What's it going to do?
Good evening, and thank you very much, Stephen. This fund, essentially, we have a donation from MTN, which have been very generous, a long friend of the South African National Editors Forum. They have given us 500,000 rands to launch this fund, and essentially we'll be able to reach some 100 journalists who have been affected by COVID, because the plan is that we will give those individuals some 5,000 rands, and it is really to just help with day-to-day living. It is supposed to help with just food, clothing where necessary. When there was a survey done, especially around freelancers and those from local and community newspapers, many of them were crying out that it's the day-to-day that they are struggling with. Just being able to put food on the table is their biggest struggle. And we thought, how can we actually assist? And we are grateful that MTN has come to the party. And we are now challenging other corporates to come to the party, and even individuals who want to help these journalists to actually come through.
What's this pandemic done to journalism? I mean, advertising is down. Some journalists have had their salaries cut quite sharply. Others have no income at all.
It is so painful, Stephen, because on the one hand, journalism has never been as important as we are seeing it now. I mean, all of the numbers are showing that there has been quite a surge in the number of South Africans that are turning to traditional news media because they are looking for credible, factual information. Whether you look at the TV, radio, or even online numbers, the surge has been quite phenomenal. People are looking to us for news that they can actually trust. But sadly, the industry is not coping. Immediately as the lockdown was announced, many media houses announced that advertising campaign were brought to an end. Some media houses are telling us as much as 70% of their advertising revenue all but disappeared. And of course, those industries themselves are going through economic strain, and the first to go will be advertising revenue. And our media industry heavily relies on advertising revenue, and without that, we simply can't survive. So we've seen in some parts where journalists are continuing to work, but unfortunately their salaries have been cut by close to 40% in many industries, and in some we've just seen freelancers let go almost immediately, and then some contracts are not being renewed, and then some companies have gone into a retrenchment process because they simply cannot cope. So at the time you need journalism the most, sadly the industry is buckling.
And being a reporter during this time, I mean, you'll know, you and I have sat in press conferences together, old-style physical press conferences. The virtual ones aren't the same. It's really very, very difficult to get some stories.
You know, we've all had to innovate. I think our commitment to the South African public to say that we will tell the story no matter what. We've actually, all of our newsrooms have actually had to find ways to tell those stories. And we've used technology to ensure that we can continue to tell the story. But also importantly, journalists are continuing to go out into the field, whether it is the impact of, whether it's the taxi strike, for example. Journalists have been out to speak to people that are affected, to speak to the taxi industry, so they continue to risk their lives so that they can tell this very critical story. But of course, where we can't, we've just had to innovate, whether people are broadcasting from their homes, Stephen, or more telephonic interviews are being done, or we are using Zoom as we are now. We've had to innovate. I think we've seen how critical we are. We are an essential service, whether it's informing the public or holding those in authority accountable. We need to keep the train moving, and we are doing our best to ensure that South Africans get the story.
Mahlatse, we know that there's a surge of cases in Gauteng, a surge in the Western Cape, problems in the Eastern Cape, important stories to tell. Is journalism only going to get more important over the next few weeks?
It is going to be quite critical because, more and more people are looking to us to understand and make sense of what is actually happening. There are a lot of people who are beginning to panic, obviously, as you see the numbers rise exponentially, but people are turning to us to say, what is the truth? There's a lot of fake voice notes that are doing the rounds. People are turning to us to say, what actually is the truth? What should we be doing to protect ourselves? So journalism is going to be quite critical. And also it is the work of journalists that shines the spotlight on the crisis that is in the Eastern Cape. And because of that, we see authorities also acting. And that's why we think that we need to continue working, and we need to continue shining the spotlight when necessary. We know the biggest story we're also going to have to tell is the economic impact on South Africans. People are really struggling, and we need to be able to tell those stories to ensure that all of society reacts, whether it's government, it's the private sector, or just ordinary citizens where they can help.